All right, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Geissenberger from Pinellas Park PD in Florida. He is in his 28th year in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Geissenberger. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paige. Thank you for having me. I'm excited for today.
I'm excited too. I was actually really looking forward to this conversation. I had so many notes from our first conversation, and I'm really looking forward to sharing your insights with our listeners. I was hoping that you could give us a little bit of background first. Who are you, and what have the last 28 years looked like for you so far?
Sure. And again, thank you for having me. I began my career right out of high school. I went to work for the Florida Department of Corrections. I always wanted to be a police officer. The police officer to me was the guy in the street in the police car. But 19 years old, coming right out of high school, nobody was taking a chance on a 19-year-old. So I went to work for the Florida Department of Corrections. Quickly realized that that was not where I wanted to be. So I went to work for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office in the jail. Again, that was what I saw as kind of a stepping stone to getting to my ultimate goal, which was being a patrol officer, a police officer on the street. So I did a little while at the Florida Department of Corrections, a little while in the jail at the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and then was fortunate enough to get picked up by the current agency I'm with, and I've been here ever since. This is my 26th year with this organization.
Wow, I didn't know that you came from corrections first. What did that environment teach you that maybe helped you in your career today? Did you feel like you took any lessons away from that?
If yes, and what I learned was if you can't talk, you can't do the job.
Mm.
And the reason for that is you're locked in a room, in a cell, in a building with uh, dozens of hardened criminals, convicted state convicts. And if you can't talk, you're going to have a very long day or a very long career there. So if nothing else, a 19-year-old kid who didn't know anything, lived at home with his mom, I learned that I needed to be really good at conflict resolution, deconfliction, and just the ability to talk. What I learned was treating the inmates as human beings and not as inmates and convicts helped me be successful in that role.
Yeah, I really appreciate that you said that because I think that communication is such a strong tool to have in your tool belt. I can't talk, tool belt, wherever you are, whether that's professionally or, personally in life. And especially as a young kid, to be able to learn that at an early age, to me, it sounds like it was a really strong and powerful tool to be able to use that within the community once you went into policing, to be able to de-escalate and have those conversations within the community, and maybe a skill that a lot of other people didn't have yet, because it's a learned skill, it's an acquired skill.
It's an acquired skill and it's a trial by fire because
Mm.
when I started with the Florida Department of Corrections back in 97, 98, and I'm not talking bad about the Florida DOC, but the training program was, here's your keys, call the boss if you have a problem. There was no formal training program. You went to the police academy or the corrections academy at the time, and then you were put into a dorm. I was assigned to um, a youthful offender prison. So it was juveniles convicted of adult crimes and juveniles being impulsive as they were, and then putting them in a secure environment like that. And not to belabor the point, these aren't first-time offenders or second-time offenders. These were 15 and 16-year-old murderers, rapists, robbers that I'm now trying to get to bend to the will of the organization, the institution, to get them to go along with what the program was. So again, if you couldn't talk, you weren't going to be successful because their full-time job was to run game and try to get one over on the COs. So you were either the pawn or you were the one that was kind of just making sure that the wheels and everything ran on time. So it was absolutely an eye-opening experience. And I tell you, if I could do it again, I would, because of the experience that I got from it. And I wish more people would get into an environment like that first to learn their strengths and their weaknesses when dealing with conflict.
Well, one of the things that you said that stuck out to me, and maybe this sounds counterintuitive, is that you said treating them like human beings, treating them with the respect of a human being. And I think that right there, what you said of, understanding that, the people that you're dealing with have committed crimes, but still being able to have the empathy for people in a way to be able to treat them with respect as human beings is also a skill that I think is incredibly valuable and I'm sure also incredibly challenging to do in certain times.
It is, and what I've learned very early, and I think this was one of the things that was taught to me was, don't even try to learn why they're here. It
Mm,
is irrelevant. The society and the courts have decided that they need to pay a price for whatever it was. It is not for me to judge them. They've been judged already. Society has judged them. The courts have judged them. My job is to ensure their safety and the security of the community and them. And I try to live by that. I didn't care what they were in there for because it was absolutely irrelevant to how they were going to be treated.
yeah, interesting. I like that. So you had told me offline that you had no business rising to the level that you did. What did you mean by that?
So kind of twofold. One part I left out was my sister and I went to the Corrections Academy together. My sister, my best friend, his friend, we all decided let's do something crazy and go to the police academy together. So we did, all for the Florida Department of Corrections. Um, and what I meant by I had no business rising to this level is you always hear, I'm going to go back and tell Mrs. Smith, my third grade English teacher, she was wrong. I was not a model student. I was the class clown. I was the center of attention in all the wrong ways. But I think that has made me the person I am today in my interactions with the new generation police officer, my daughter. Um, you know, I don't take myself overly serious all the time. And I think uh, the hardships that I had because of my own actions coming up, I never thought, and most people will tell you this when they start out in this job, you never think that this is where you're going to sit in the organization, right? 19 years old, I wanted to be a cop in a cruiser. I never thought beyond that, 25, 28 years later, that I was going to be the CEO of an organization with 150 men and women who depend on my leadership and my management. Um, Again, if you went back and talked to my high school English teacher, she'd say you're nuts that this is the guy you're sitting here talking to. I don't think it was in the cards, but obviously I was wrong, and I'm humbled by it.
You know, I think that we should celebrate individuality. I think the fact that you were kind of a class clown and you had your own personality is something that is a strength. And I think sometimes, and I've done this in my life, where I feel like I have to conform to be a certain way in order to make it to a certain point in life. And I did this early in my career, and I had someone kind of point it out to me, and it was kind of an eye-opening thing where early in my career, I thought, and I told you this offline a little bit, I've always been, when I was younger, kind of a people pleaser, and I really just wanted to like keep the peace and, try to conform to be like certain versions of myself that people would love or, value. But in my career, I tried so hard to be like my mentor, and because I thought that that's how you had to be to find success. And so I tried to be exactly like him. I remember like trying to say the same jokes, trying to like speak in the way that he did, trying to teach in the way that he did. And I thought if I was just like a replica of this guy who has, found this level of success, that I would also be able to match that level of success. And what I realized is not only was I being unauthentic to who I am because I'm not like him, and I thought that that was a bad thing. And now as I've gotten older, I realize that like the things that make me me are my strengths. And people are going to gravitate towards me because of who I am. And if they don't, at least it's, I'm being authentic on the way there. But I had a friend kind of grab my shoulders and not literally shake me, but they kind of like shook me a little bit and they were like, listen, no one is going to be a better him than him. If people like want to learn from him, they're going to go to him. Like, what do you bring to the table? What is it
Right?
that makes you valuable? And it was this moment where I was like, wow, like we don't have to be clones of each other to be successful. And I would argue that having different personalities, different insights, different perspectives, and rising to that level of leadership and being different is what needs to happen to create growth and momentum forward. If everyone thought the same and everyone was exactly the same, there would never be any sort of growth or individuality within the profession. And so I would say that all those things that make you you are exactly why you're there.
Well, thank you very much for that. Yeah, yeah. I've never changed who I am, and one of the most liberating things for me in my life and in my career was when I came to the realization that if I come to work every day to do my job instead of coming to work to keep it, I'm going to be that much more successful. And the people that listen to this podcast and people you've talked to in the past, the average career span for a chief is 3 to 5 years. I don't dwell on it, right? I come to work to do my job, and I want my folks to know that I'm here to do the job for them, not to keep it, not to chase that paycheck. And again, once I did that, it was liberating. It was liberating for my mentality, for my psyche. That I'm not going to compete for my job every day. If they want someone else to do this job as their CEO, as the chief of police, then I encourage the city to go and do that. And I think that my folks appreciate that and see that I come to work for them every single day.
Do you think that has allowed you to um, maybe make decisions or implement things that maybe people who were afraid of just keeping their job wouldn't, because you're not afraid of losing it in a way? Like, do you feel like that allowed you to make decisions that maybe other people wouldn't if they were afraid to lose their job?
I think so, and unfortunately, you can see it on the news, or you can see it around the country. You have some chiefs that are appointed, right? They're not elected like sheriffs are. They're appointed, that do have a city council and city managers and city leadership that they have to worry about, was the messaging right? I'm never going to do anything illegal, immoral, unethical, or anything that would overtly embarrass the city at large. But they put me in place to run and manage a police department with men and women who are serving our community. So long answer to your short question is, I do feel a little empowered in that I'm not going to temper my response to things to keep my job. I'm going to ensure my position is heard for the benefit of the majority of the folks here.
Yeah. I'm curious because you are in leadership and you have been for a while. What is the most important leadership lesson that you've learned so far?
So this may sound a little, I'll answer the question. It's twofold. One, my greatest ability is availability. And I tell this to my command staff all the time: be where your feet are. Right now, you and I are having this conversation. I should not be on my phone. I should not be on my computer. My attention should be given to you because this was my promise to you. And that's how I approach it with my staff as well. When it is our time together, it is you and I. There's no outside influences, and I'm not naive to think an emergency is not going to happen. But being where your feet are and being present in the moment, I think is one of the most important things when it comes to this job.
Yeah, I love that. I wrote that down, being available and being present. I also think, we talked a little bit about this offline, but the older I get, the more I realize the value of time. And I appreciate it so much more when there is someone that is present with me. It means so much to me. Like I have such a deep takeaway when someone actually spends the time and looks me in the eye and is present with me. Like I have such an appreciation for that because I understand now that it's our most valuable asset. Our time is so limited. And if someone's going to spend that time with me, I value and appreciate that so much. I think it speaks so much more than people like maybe realize, especially the younger generation. I had a kid, I'm going to say he's a kid because he was like probably early 20s. The other day he was in a briefing and he's like, I don't got to think about like some of that stuff. I have so much time. And I was like, you have less time than you think sometimes. It goes by so fast. And so, how can we be present with each other? How can we be intentional with our time?
And I think that is a profound statement. We have to be intentional with our time because we can waste each other's time, right? But what is being neglected if I'm wasting your time or you're wasting mine? And these younger folks, and I was the younger folk that went, I can't wait till December and I can't wait till June. Now I wish I could go back to November and October. Um, for me, my clock really started to accelerate when my daughter was born, almost 17 years ago, like that, gone. So the one currency we'll never get back is time. So we have to treat it as a valuable commodity that it is.
100%. Yeah, and I think that we are always, it's interesting. I hear so often, this statement of I don't have time. And we all have the same amount of time. And so it goes back to what I said before. How can we be more present? How can we be more intentional? How can we prioritize our time in the best way possible? And I've had to kind of rearrange my habits a little bit, and realize where I'm spending time ineffectively. And I'm not saying don't rest. I'm not saying don't take care of yourself. But what I am saying is I've doom scrolled many a times where I, look up and it's been an hour and a half that I've been scrolling on my phone and not present in my life or doing things, for myself or my wellness. And so I think that if we can really understand the value of time, then we can start to be more specific with how we spend our time. And I think that maybe it's lived experience. Maybe it's like as we get older, we don't recognize it until, we're at this point where, we're halfway through our lives and can't believe it. I thought of this the other day. I'm like, I'm kind of halfway through this thing. It's a weird thing to start thinking about.
And you made a good point when you're talking about being thoughtful and intentional with your time. And everyone that'll listen to this, and you included, will appreciate this, where we think we are so important. I don't care what organization you're with. We're so important that at 7 o'clock at night, the email is taking away from my family. Or I'm telling my daughter or my wife, hold on, I have to what? Right? I did 8, 10, 12 hours in the office. If it's that important, the phone will ring, the text message, the email. We have to prioritize what's important, and this job is extremely important and they put me in this position for a reason. However, I need to be able to prioritize what is important right now or what can wait. And when I'm at home, as much as I can, my number one priority is my family.
Thank you for saying that. I've had to, one, for me, scheduling stuff is important. If it's not on my calendar, it doesn't happen. And so I've had to like schedule wellness time for myself or schedule family time, like some of these things so that I can actually like carve that time out. But what I've started to realize, because I've made these mistakes in my life where I'll give you an example. This is one of my biggest regrets in my life. I had a big event and I was kind of like, the keynote basically for this big event. And my grandma was in the hospital and it wasn't looking good. And I went out to visit, and the whole time I was there, I was like, I got to get back home. I got to get back home. I have this event. I have this event. I'm the keynote. How can they survive without me? This is the pinnacle of my career. Um, and wasn't present with my family, saw my grandma one time, and then the doctors were like, "Oh yeah, well, like we think she's on the up." And I was like, "Okay, that's my cue. That's my out. She's doing better. I'm out of here." And never saw my grandma again. I prioritized this event over my family because I thought it was the most important thing and that this was gonna, set the trajectory for the rest of my career. And now looking back, that event was so meaningless in the timeline of my life and career. And I can never get that time back with my grandma, ever. And I regret it every day. I try to give myself grace, but it's one of those things where I'm like, wow, I wish I wouldn't have done that. And so now what I take a look at is exactly what you said. Is this like urgent? Is this email something that cannot wait till tomorrow? Is this something that if I do not do this right now, everything comes crashing down and burning to the ground? If that answer is yes, which 10 times out of 10, usually it's a no, but if it's a yes, of course, deal with it. If there's something that's major, major that has to be dealt with. Otherwise, it can wait till tomorrow. That email can
You're
wait.
right.
But that time with your kid, that movie that they want to watch or they want to go out in the backyard and kick the soccer ball, you won't get that back. So Listen to us, anyone who's listening, especially if you're younger, and, prioritize the things that are important to you because there are a lot of things that you don't get back.
Absolutely.
I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of a period in your career because I thought this was really interesting. So, you transitioned into a civilian role for a period of time, and you said it was really out of your comfort zone. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened and how you were able to kind of step into that uncomfortability for a period of time?
So we had a new city manager came in. He came from inside the organization, but he elevated to the role of city manager. And one of the first couple of things he had to do, the uncomfortable things, was he had to let some people go. And these were administrators of different city departments. We had a very good working relationship. Again, I'm a police captain. I'm, sitting at my desk. I'm doing what I do. And he asked me to come see him. So the chief at the time and I went over and saw him. And he told me that he was going to let go the person in charge of our community development department, which is building permits, inspections, code enforcement, things like that. Still kind of being a little naive, he said, I want you to come do this for me. So immediately you're starting to think about the long-term impacts of that. You're going from a high-risk pension to a general pension. You're giving up the ancillary benefits that come with being a law enforcement officer. I'm number 2, number 3 in the organization. I'm going to go to a job that I can't even spell, let alone know anything about, and risk, again, are you coming to work every day to keep your job or do your job? That was a fight or flight type ask. However, him being the CEO of the city and the city manager, I don't think it would have been detrimental had I said no, but him asking me in and of itself said something about what he saw in me. So to your point, yes, very uncomfortable. I took the uniform off, I put on a shirt and tie, and I went over I went over to another department completely. I divorced myself. The chief of police at the time did not want me involved at all. He said it wouldn't be fair to the police department or the department that I was going to try to wear both hats. So I did. I completely divorced myself. It was an interim job towards permanent. So I was still a police officer, right? I got a badge and a gun, but I didn't wear it to work. I was a shirt and tie guy that was in charge of planning, zoning, things that I took for granted because it had nothing to do with me as a police officer. So yes, very, very uncomfortable. This is the only job I've known my entire adult life. And then you ask me to go do something that, again, I know where the building is. I have no idea what they do or what the foundation or principles of their role is, and have enough faith and trust in me to go in there and lead 60 people who are much smarter, who have been doing much longer, and trying to get them to trust me and my abilities was pretty exciting, scary, anxiety-ridden, but I did it, and I'm better for it.
Yeah. I like that you said I'm better for it because there's an interesting thing that I see, and especially I think as we get older, we're so afraid to be uncomfortable. We're so afraid to learn new things and to like suck at something, or to like be new at something. And I think it limits our growth so much if you're not willing to step outside your comfort zone and learn a new skill to try to understand different ways of doing things or brand new ways of doing things, then we almost force ourselves into this place of stagnation. And so, do you think that even though it was really scary, do you think that being able to do that has helped to progress your own self-development and the position that you are now as chief? Do you think that that helped?
It did, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I was always, for my entire career, I was the one that I'll just do it myself because it's easier. It's quicker. It'll be done the way I want it done. When I got thrust over there, I don't care if it was something as small as reading a map or something as big as a multi-story apartment complex plan. I didn't know anything. So I had to trust in the ability of the folks that were put in place to do the job, which was almost, I don't want to say an epiphany, that's too big of a word, but it made me realize that I don't have to be the all-knowing, right? I don't have to be the expert on all things. That's why we employ a staff. So it was a very good opportunity for me to be uncomfortable, or let me rephrase that, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's kind of my mantra when I promote these new bosses now. I want you to be uncomfortable as you develop into your new role. Because if you go right into something brand new that you've never done, that you don't know anything about, and you're comfortable, it's either arrogance or you're in the wrong profession. So it made me have a newfound respect for challenge the folks that you surround yourself with to make all of these successful.
I love that you said you learned to trust and value the strengths of your team, and you learned the power of delegation. I've had to learn that in my life too. I'm the same way as you. Like I was always like in school, I remember being like a kid and we would have group projects and I'd be like, I got it. Don't worry. No matter what it was, I'm like, I'll build it because I can build it better. And so I can completely relate to that. I actually had a friend one time, and this, I don't know why certain things stick with me, but this was like one of those kind of pivotal moments in my life where she told me, I was complaining about something, and she told me, she's like, you are really bad at being uncomfortable. And I at first was so offended by this. I was like, no, I'm not. Like, what do you mean? Like, whatever. And then I had that like, that moment of kind of introspection of like, oh wow, like I really am bad at being uncomfortable. And ever since then, I've really tried, I'm not perfect at this, but I've really tried to put myself in positions of uncomfortability. And I actually think that the only way that you can grow is if you allow yourself to be uncomfortable, because change and growth is uncomfortable. It's like that the story about like the crab, right? Like they outgrow their shells and they have to like go find new ones, right? It's like you have to be able to get uncomfortable, and you have to kind of outgrow your situation sometimes in order to move on towards something bigger and better.
And you don't have to stay uncomfortable, but you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah, oh, 100%. I like that. Okay, so at some point you transitioned back into policing. How did that happen?
So I can vividly remember it. I'm sitting at home and remember I'm still wearing the doing the job. So still have access to the emails and the databases and the alerting systems in place. We have something called the Deadly Force Task Force in Pinellas County, which is a mutual aid effort in the event of an officer-involved shooting. So the alert goes off. I didn't discount it so much, but I'm like, that really doesn't have anything to do with me. It's definitely not my folks. Come to find out, one of my officers was shot, which ended up in a pursuit. I just said, get dressed in your police attire. Go down there and be a police officer. I went down there that night and I went to the city manager's house and I picked him up and I brought him to the hospital, and we went to the scene where the bad guy was arrested, and we went to the hospital where our officer was recovering. We went to the scene and talked to the officer that was there when her partner got shot, and she put rounds down range. And I told him that night, I said, I have to go back to the police department. And he wasn't taken aback. He goes, I've been waiting for you to tell me that. And I'm not embarrassed, but I hate that it took this incident to tell the boss, hey, I need to go back, right? It doesn't matter the role I'm in when I go back. I left as a captain. He put me back in as a captain, but I knew that my calling was there, and seeing my officer in the hospital and seeing the passion in all of the law enforcement officers' eyes that night and going to get the bad guy and making sure our guy was okay was a reflection moment for me. And I knew I needed to get back to do the most good for the most people all the time, and that was in this profession.
And you told me that, when all this happened and you came back and you were eventually promoted to be chief of police. I don't know how much time passed between, when you came back and when you were promoted, but you said that this kind of gave you moments of reflection, looking back on past decisions that you had made, and there were maybe a few things that stood out to you. Are you willing to share a couple of those things that you kind of were reflecting on, as you entered into this position as chief?
You know, when you start this profession, right, you're the Superman. You're going to solve all the world's problems in one fell swoop. You realize that's fiction, that's fantasy. Then I promoted, my first promotion, I'm the boss now, right? I didn't know anything about being a boss, but you start to kind of grow into the role. You either sink or swim, and I hate to say it like that, but you have no choice to either rise to the occasion or fail. So I I guess I was successful as a sergeant because I promoted to the rank of lieutenant. Early on, as a lieutenant, which is a ship commander for my organization, one of the sergeants comes to me. The sergeant I think we're going to talk about here in a minute. He comes to me and he says, "Hey, we're struggling with Officer so-and-so." The old Adam, and this kind of goes to another point that you may ask me to make. The old Adam would have been like, "Okay, if we're struggling with him, let's cut bait, let's move on." I don't know why. I didn't have a relationship with this officer at the time, but something said, give him a chance, right? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. His struggles were report writing. It wasn't police work. It wasn't talking to people. It wasn't command presence. It was putting words to paper that made sense. So I told the sergeant, I said, let's give him a little bit. Let's work with him and give him a little bit. And I don't know if it was divine intervention or whatever you want to call it, but a week later, had that officer not been working, I'd have a dead police officer. He absolutely saved his life and his partner's life on a very routine call for service. And I won't belabor the point too much with the call for service, but a man executes his son. His wife escapes the house, calls us, doesn't tell us anything. We go out there, we knock on the door, rounds are exchanged. He saved his partner's life. So again, I'm not taking credit for that, but what I'm saying is it is very easy to hold people to the same standard we hold ourselves. It's another thing to realize that we are dealing with men and women, young and old, human beings that come from all different walks of life. And today I get to look back on that as a win for the good guys. And I look at him and he's extremely successful, one of the most charismatic professional officers I have. And I don't know if you got me a year before that or 2 years before that, would my approach have been different with him? I'm glad it wasn't. And we're here to talk about how successful he and his partner are today, due to the actions that he took that night. So I'm proud of both of them.
Yeah, I like that you talked about supporting and developing your people, and also trying to understand maybe where the disconnect is. Um, I can relate to the brush off, right? Of like, okay, like dead weight or whatever it is, just, move on, or having that frustration. But what you did, and I really wonder if this, every role that you've had throughout your career helped you to develop these skills, because I've heard kind of a similar thread throughout our conversation of emotional intelligence and seeing people as people and seeing value in them. And for you to be able to sit there and say, hey, let's work with him, let's develop him, let's try to encourage his growth, and then to see the fruits of that later, I think is a really strong message for everybody. And I think that sometimes we look at surface level, and I'm going to put this in the context of wellness because we talk about this a lot. Sometimes we see symptoms and we write off the symptoms without understanding the root of the issue. And I think if we could all sit back and say, okay, here's the challenge. What is the root cause of this? And then what is the step that we can take for forward progress? What are these solution-based conversations that we can have to have forward momentum? And sometimes I think that we get stuck in like problem-based conversations of like, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem, instead of saying, okay, this is a challenge. Is it workable? What is the root cause? And then what is the solution? How can we improve?
Yes, and I don't know, and it's been several years now, but I don't know, was it someone didn't take the time with him to ensure that he was meeting the metrics, right? It was, he would turn it in, they'd kick it back without any follow-up or coaching.
Mm.
Again, looking back now, how silly would that have been for me to get rid of a professional, a young man, right, Army veteran, but a professional that was just struggling with basic concepts of how to write a police report because we didn't take the time to lay the foundation. I don't know if that's what the case was. I'm going to hang my hat on it and say it was. We had an opportunity there and we took it and we're better for it. it is very easy, again, like I said earlier, to hold people to the standard you hold yourself. And the higher we move in the organization, the standard that we hold for ourselves is much greater. That's not fair and that's unrealistic, especially given the generation is changing. We have a much more intelligent generation coming up, but their needs and their goals are much different than what mine were coming up. So we have to be willing to adapt to that and foster an environment where everyone is part of the solution.
Yeah. One of the things that you said, it's really in line with what you've said right now, but you told me this offline that everyone's different and they're not you. And I think that if we remind ourselves of where we came from, it helps with that a lot because, of course, you as chief of police, someone who's been in this career 28, going on 28 years, of course, like there's certain things that are going to feel like a no-brainer or easy, and I have to remind myself too, like, what did it feel like to be younger in this career and to struggle with things or for things to be new or to maybe have to learn by fire and not have the appropriate training. We've all been there where you're like, the duck analogy, on the surface, you're trying to like look calm and collected, and underneath, you're paddling like hell to stay afloat. And you're like, what do I do? And I think if we can remind ourselves of that feeling of being new and young and maybe feeling like out of your depth with things, that we can start to have that empathy for people of like, how can we be better at developing? How can we create training that's going to land with everybody because everyone learns differently. Everyone's going to understand concepts in different ways. And I'm curious to know, how have you maybe been able to adapt to the younger generation? What are some things that you're finding that have to kind of pivot or change to land with the younger men and women who are coming into your career?
Well, I'll start the answer with this. Half of my command staff is that younger generation. Half of my senior executive staff, my deputy chief of police is that generation. He's a lot older, not in age, but wisdom. He's a lot older. But they're of that generation. And I think for me is I try to be personable and approachable and involved. At the same time, and I'll try to keep this point short because I don't know if it's answering the question, but when I was a police officer, I was your best friend, right? We were side by side, we were going to calls together. And I'm talking about people I came up with. I made corporal. There was a little bit of a wedge, but it wasn't anything major. I made sergeant. I sent him a message, hey, can we chat? Why? We were friends yesterday. Then you make lieutenant and send that same person a message, hey, can we meet? They're calling their union rep, their attorney, and I'm getting 3 phone calls before they come in to see me. As the chief now, I'm not Adam, I'm chief. To the same people that we raised our kids together, we rolled around in the dirt together, we bled, we sweat together. It's just, I have to understand that the way the chief or the majors or the deputy chiefs are viewed amongst the generation, as well as just the working men and women here, it's different. And it's different because with rank comes this separation. And as hard as we try to break down the barriers, it's still an us versus them. When you understand that, I think it will help move the ship forward. But until you understand that, even though you started the academy with this person and you broke bread together and you went to calls for service together, once one starts moving away in rank and authority, the relationship suffers. It does. And being the chief is the loneliest profession in the world. You hear the joke, heavy is the head. Heavy is the head, right? Because at 5, 6 o'clock at night when we're fretting over decisions, everyone else is at home, they're doing their thing. They don't have the stressors that come with this role. And trying to educate the younger generation that I'm not just sitting at a desk shoveling papers all day. These are the reasons we do the things we do, and we try to weigh the risk analysis and the return on investment for decisions we make. If I can do nothing else but educate them on the why. And sometimes you can't give them the why, but the why is important. I can absolutely make a decision right now, and in the paramilitary organization we are, they're going to do it, but they're going to do it a lot more willingly if there's a why attached to it.
Yeah, that was exactly what I was thinking when you were talking. Because, I grew up, and I don't, maybe I am the old girl. Maybe when I walk into the briefing rooms, I'm the old lady in the room. I don't know. But I grew up, if my parents told me to do something and I said why, they were like, "What?" Like you're asking me why because I said so. That's why. Like there was like how dare you ask why, And now I think that we're starting to see how valuable the why is, especially with the younger generation. And I think it's always been valuable. I think we've always wanted to know the why. Like I think sometimes when decisions were made, we've always wanted, but maybe just in our generation, it wasn't acceptable to ask that. But now I feel like we're starting to develop the way that we train and the way that we talk to people and really leaning into the why. And I agree with you. I think that we're getting a lot more buy-in and understanding for certain things, especially like in my space, the wellness space, when people understand why it's important. And I'm not just sitting here saying, you should do this because I said so, but rather
Yep.
saying, why is it important for you? Or, hey, this is why these things are important. Then there's more of that receptiveness and buy-in, and the walls kind of come down a little bit versus because I told you so.
Yes, and I don't care how old you are. Well, it may matter to generational differences, but nobody wants to be told because I said so, right? We're not 12 or 13 living with our mom. We're grown men and women with guns and badges who can take freedom and liberty and life because I said so. Unless it's emergent, unless it is so critical that I just need you to do it. And more often than not, when it is those situations, they get it, right? They're not going to stop and go, "Why do you want me to get a shield and a helmet?" But if time is on our side and we have the ability to explain the why and include them in the decision-making process as much as we can, the goodwill we sow and the benefit to the community, because there's no dissolution here. The community allows us to police them, and my officers allow me to lead them, right? Without those two things, I'm out of a job, and my police officers don't have a community to work in partnership with. So that is the biggest message I want to stress.
Yeah, well, I think the key word that kind of popped up for me is like it's a partnership. Like you are making sure that the men and women who work with you feel valued. And because they feel valued, they want to be led by you. It's this partnership that happens. And so I think that, I mean, maybe someone who's listening would disagree, but I've never met anyone in my life who doesn't want to feel valued. Never met anyone. I think we all innately inside of us want to feel like we're valued for the work and the sacrifice that we make. So I think that if you have that, then it's going to create more of that team partnership to move the ship forward. One of the things that you said to me, and I'm curious kind of, what you meant by it, but you said that there was a moment where you paused and you realized that there's more to this job than what you believed it to be.
So I'm glad you brought that up. Tomorrow, when I don't come to work, this place will continue to move forward. And when my deputy chief doesn't come to work, we will miss him for a minute. They will miss me. Hopefully they'll miss me for 5 minutes, but they're only going to miss us for as long as it takes for the next person to sit here. And when we understand our time here is short, right? You and I have been talking about time as a currency we can never get back. We can only do as much as we can while we're here. So yes, there was an incident, and I think the incident had such an impact on me as a father and as a professional law enforcement officer because it was always for me, it was always mission first. And what I forgot was the second part, and that's people always, right? Mission first, people always. And I'll try to get through this without getting overly emotional. 2011, we had 2 officers killed in St. Petersburg. One of them was a canine officer. It was an all hands on deck approach. It was a devastating time for the entire region. One of my officers at the time, it wasn't my officer, one of my peers at the time was a canine officer. And his daughter was in school. And this is kind of a long way around the story, but long story short, he goes to the shooting. And he's supposed to pick his daughter up from school. Well, and his daughter's young, I'm going to guess 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, young and impressionable. Teacher comes in and says, hey, class, let's all take a moment. We're going to pray. It wasn't public school, obviously. Let's take a moment. We're going to pray. A canine officer was killed today. They didn't tell her who. They didn't tell her where. Comes out of the school, her dad's not there. They told me this story. That's when I had the, it is bigger than us. It is not about, I'm a cop all the time. I'm one person with one family with one set of whatever the case may be. But every single person that does this job has a different path and has a different family and has a different outlook on everything. And that just struck me that he's a human being first, right? We are all human beings first. And I don't know why it took me to that incident to realize that the standard I'm holding people to is unrealistic, right? We're not robots. But again, I was always of that mission first mentality. And it took that to happen, which was not early in my career, it was mid-career. But it took that to happen for me to realize it's people always. And since then, I'm not perfect. I've not always lived up to that, but I try to go out of my way to live up to that mantra.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I know, there have been maybe a few moments in your career that have brought you back to the human side of who you are beneath this career. And I really wanted to talk about this because I think it's so important for us to understand that what we do is important and it's valuable. Who you are outside of what you do, I would argue, is even more important. And even if you want to say equally as important, if you want to do like a 50-50 split, I'm okay with that too. But I think sometimes we pour all of ourselves into what we do and we identify so much with what we do that we forget about the other pieces and the people in our lives and the things that matter after the career ends. And I have been in a situation when you said that, when you were like, people are going to maybe remember me for a couple minutes. I've felt that. I've done my own transition out of careers, and I'll tell you, it's less than you think. And you are faced with what's left over in your life. And I know you shared with me that you had a friend, a buddy that was really close to you that kind of took you by the shoulders and kind of shook you a little bit maybe, and made you realize the importance of your own personal wellness, and it brought you back to your why. And I was hoping you could share that experience with us as well.
So my entire adult life, I've been, more often than not, I've been heavy as opposed to fit, because it's a lot easier and cheaper to eat bad, not exercise, lounge around, whatever the case may be. So I'd have small pockets or moments where I looked good, but more often than not, I was overweight. And he said to me one day, as the reality of me becoming the chief was evident, and this is a guy that I've promoted a couple of times and works for me currently. And he says to me, hey, bro, not for nothing, we can't have a fat chief. And I think he said it jokingly, but I know deep down he meant it. He's a fit guy, he's a SWAT commander. And it dawned on me that how am I going to be a good leader? How am I going to be a good father? How am I going to be there for my folks here and my family at home? If I am that out of shape, unhealthy, fill in the blank for all of the things that come with this profession. It's inherently detrimental to our health to do this job to begin with. The stress, the late nights, the eating like garbage in the car. But I also have a daughter who I'd like to walk down the aisle and dance with at her wedding and see her children, my grandchildren, which I hope is many years away. But I want to be there for all of that. And I want to be here every single day that I have this gift to be the chief, this opportunity to influence the future of this profession. I want to be healthy enough to be able to do it. And I can't sit here and preach about mental and physical wellness if I'm busting out of the seams and I can't fit in my chair and my gun belt. It's just, we've all seen it. I had the ability to do something about it. I'm extremely humbled and proud that I was able to do it. I've gone from extremely morbidly obese to Healthy. I'm healthy. My doctor gave me a clean bill of health. I'm in the gym every single day, and I want to be that example for these folks coming up, these 20-year-olds. And I'm not a hypocrite, right? I've done it. I've been the 20-year-old that ate at McDonald's 3 times a day. But I can also speak from experience and tell these folks, it's fun now at 20. When you get to be my age and you're still doing that, you're going to pay for it. You're absolutely going to pay for it. So if I can change the mind or touch 1 or 2 people and show them my path, and I have no problem showing them the pictures of who I was and where I came from to what I am now. I just want to be, I want to be that influence in my daughter's life, first and foremost, of someone who cares enough to be there for her. And for the men and women that work for me, I want them to see, okay, this guy practices what he preaches, right? We have a wellness program. We have a physical and a mental health wellness program. If I'm the hypocrite who weighs 300 pounds, who's scarfing down McDonald's while I'm doing a podcast with you, the credibility's gone. And that will erode the trust that my folks have with me.
Thank you. I don't know if you saw, I was like getting kind of teary-eyed while you were talking because I think sometimes we forget what it's all for. And
You said it earlier, right? We were talking about how long they're going to remember me for. You know what my daughter's going to remember? Was I there? Not that I was a police chief. It was cool when she was 10. She's almost 17 years old. She doesn't care that I'm a police chief. Am I present? And when this career is over, which it is going to be over because that's the inevitable, did she care that I was a good chief or I was a present father? And you've got to find that balance. But I want to be remembered as the present father. If no one remembers me as the chief of police, I've still accomplished something.
yeah, I think that's beautiful, and I think it's a reminder to me, to anyone who's listening of, why are we doing these things? Who is it for? And if you're not willing to do it for yourself, who are you willing to do it for? Is it your family? Is it your team? Is it your community? Like, who are you willing to take the steps? And you said this earlier, and it really stuck with me that inaction is action. And I thought that was so powerful because we have to take the steps. And what is the message if we're not willing to take those steps? Because there is a message in that. And I agree with you that inaction is action. We are taking action and we're showing people, what our priorities are. And so I appreciate you sharing your why and that it's your daughter. And I can't wait to see the pictures of you walking her down the aisle. I think that
Many years.
many years. I know you said she's in high school.
Yeah, she's almost 17.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. If she's listening, wait a while. Enjoy your 20s.
Yes,
Uh,
ma'am.
my final question, I know I'm running over on time here with you, but my final question is for that younger generation, for the younger men and women who are entering into this career, what words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something that you wish you would have known earlier or something that's helped you along the way.
So again, talking about the folks that I came up with, very close individuals, one of my detectives, we came up together and we made a pact. It wasn't even like an official pact. We just made this agreement together that we would never regret anything. So if I can impart words of wisdom, would be get out of your comfort zone, try new things, do things you are not comfortable with, right? 99% of the people I interview, I want to be on SWAT, I want to be on K9. How about we try community policing or youth services? Do something that you're not comfortable with, get out of your comfort zone, and don't regret anything. Because as much as we are so worried about peer pressure and peer pushback, they're not signing your check, they're not going home with you at night, right? Do it for you, do it for your family, do it for your why. And get out of your own way, get out of your comfort zone, be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I've done every job this organization has to offer. So people will tell you that you're an expert at nothing. No, I'm not. But I'm one of the most well-rounded folks here because I've done a little bit of everything. And if I can stress anything, that's what it would be, is just get out of your comfort zone, go back to school, get the education, and try new things. Try new things and accept that you're going to fail and that it's okay to fail as long as you get up. You're not going to be judged by how you fall down. You are going to be judged by how you get back up.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on here and sharing your words of wisdom with our listeners today.
Thank you for having me, Paige, very much. I appreciate it.
Of course.